Hi, everyone. Welcome to Naveem Connect, the place where spirituality meets the messy but beautiful reality of being human. We're your hosts, Jean and Humphrey.
Today's conversation is for anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed, disconnected, or unsure how to trust their inner voice.
Our guest today is Stefanie, founder of Energy Alliance. She was an overall mom of two, stuck in a cycle of anxiety and self doubt until she practiced meditation and cracked open her reality, awakening clairvoyant abilities and a powerful calling to healing others.
Clairvoyant abilities she never saw coming. Now, Stephanie's on a mission to help others transform their struggles into strength. She'll share how she turned anxiety into intuition, why energy hygiene matters, and how tarot became her tool for truth.
So, whether you're a spiritual pro or just curious about energy work, this conversation is your reminder to pause, breathe, and trust your sensitivities.
Stefanie, before we start, could you take a moment to introduce yourself? Tell our listeners who you are, what you do, and why this work matters so deeply to you.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. My name's Stefanie. I'm the owner of Energy Alliance, and I'm an energetic intuitive. So what that means, as an energetic intuitive, I work with individuals to guide them into deeper self-awareness and to reconnect with their own innate wisdom, right? So I do this through energy work, tarot, and guided meditation.
Beautifully said. Let's start at the beginning then. Stefanie, before spirituality, you described your past self as an anxious and unhappy mom. What did that version of you physically feel like day to day, and what finally pushed you to try meditation?
Yeah, this is a great question. I was an anxious, overwhelmed mom. I was like a mom of two young girls. I, had, it's kind of the typical story. I had it all. I was married, two kids, had a house, moved to this cool place. And I was like, what? And, it just was, I was just so overwhelmed. And
Now, Stefanie, were you overwhelmed because your life drastically changed, or is it that no one really gives you a manual about how to parent when you have kids?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's what happens is your life does drastically change. And, part of it is we want all these things, right? And we don't ever question really why we want them, but we do them. And then, we're in this situation where we're like, oh, because I believe motherhood, being a parent, just cracks you wide open, and it's an incredible opportunity for growth. And if we see it that way, then yay, we're participating, excuse me, in life. But, I didn't, yeah, like you said, there's no manual. No one says, hey, honey, this is a huge transition in your life. And like, do you need hope or guidance? And I remember, asking my parents, I sat down with them and, I didn't grow up religious or have any sense of spirituality. So I was like, hey, I was asking them questions and it was hard, it was hard to find my answers. And I just remember sitting, at night in front of the TV, with my glass of red wine, like, I was like, this can't be it. This cannot be it.
Mhm, mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So, for the people out there that are more logical, can you share how does the anxiety physically present itself in our bodies?
Yeah, that's a good question. So physically, it felt like my nervous system was just like all the time. Like, I was just feeling exhausted, confused, lost, incredibly lonely. My body was like tired. You're running around, and there's a certain amount of it. You have small children, you're tired. All those things happen, right? We know that. But to answer your question about the physical is difficult because for me it was very much a strong feeling of like a spiritual void. And, I even had a therapist at the time I had seen earlier in life, and I'd started seeing her again. And she looked at me and she said, you're having a crisis of, the psyche. Like it's a crisis, a spiritual crisis is what you're going through. And I didn't, I didn't know, I didn't know what that meant or what it was, and I think, when it started to become more clear for me I'm pretty open to change and trying new things. And so as I was trying to navigate motherhood in our society and how we run it now, nothing was really helping. Nothing wasn't helping me feel at ease or okay, I feel better now. And until I got into meditation and energy work, really.
Oh, okay.
I hope that
Interesting.
answers your question. I know that you're.
No, it does. I mean,
Okay.
it brings up a bunch of other questions, but I'm
Yeah.
sure we're going to get into that in this podcast.
So tell us a little bit about that. What got you into the meditations? You said you felt all those things until you got into meditation. So tell us a little bit what got you there.
Yeah. Part of it was, I never thought I could meditate, right? I'm one of those people, like most of us are like, I can't sit down and close my eyes and get quiet, right? And I was like that. I mean, even though I did, yoga or practices similar. A friend of mine who lived in Chicago was like, I'm doing a little meditation class online. I was like, oh, check it out. So I got on, and she had just brilliantly broke it down into like 5-minute chunks, like at first. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. So I started doing that, and I was like, oh, it was just, it was easy enough for me to enter into, and my awareness was like, oh, something's here for me. It was just really obvious. And then I found a meditation teacher in my community that was doing online meditations, and I started working with her, guided meditations.
Got it. Got it. Now, when you describe that process, you mentioned that you had sort of like an out-of-world experience, like out of this realm sort of experience when you did a meditation. Can you describe to us what that kind of felt like, and how did that shifted your point of view? Because you do mention in the past you said that it changed sort of your way of looking at reality, right? And I think everybody that's gone through meditation has found that. It would be great if you can share how that was experienced.
Sure.
How that experience was for you.
First of all, I just wanted to talk a little bit about meditation, and it being, people are like, it's really difficult to meditate, and so
right.
I'm not gonna lie. It's difficult, right? They're like, don't think about anything. And you're like, what do you mean don't think about anything? Like, push all your thoughts away. And you're like, but okay, I'm thinking, oh no, I'm not supposed to think. Stop thinking. And then it's like this cycle.
It's kind of agonizing. And so there's a difference between what that kind of meditation is, like mindfulness meditation, right? Where you're sitting and you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to let the cloud pass or the thought pass through, right? Those kind of things where you're just quiet with yourself. And to me, that is an extremely difficult place to start when you're in our world of blah, 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 right? So any meditation practice is a training and a practice. And that's like the best way to look at it. So when I started with those little 5-minute meditations, it was guided. And then when I worked with a teacher who was doing longer meditations, like hour, it was guided. And a guided meditation, I feel, for individuals that want to drop into awareness, is the way to go, because it keeps your mind kind of occupied, and there's other things going on, right? Whether you believe it or not, your other senses are kind of opening up, and they have just a chance to breathe, right? And your mind's being occupied. So just wanted to note that, like, going from 0 to a 60-minute, meditation is...
No, that's actually a great point, Stefanie, because there's a lot of people, including us, and I'm with Jean. I couldn't do meditation even if you paid me back when I was younger.
Oh, really?
And it's for that reason, because I couldn't sit down, I couldn't think about it. But I actually started, just like you mentioned, with guided meditation, just listening to something else. And like you said, it just keeps your mind focused into that, and then it opens up different things. But I haven't had the older realm experience, so I'm very interested to hear from your point. So, how do you get to that, and how did that feel?
Yeah. So my teacher was doing guided meditations and working with energy. So we were doing energetic work in these meditations. And so this one particular offering she did, it was like, I think a summer solstice or some change in the year like that. And she offered this guided hour-long meditations on over the phone. I was like, cool. And she guided us on this astral journey. And the astral plane is like where we go when we dream.
Mm-hmm.
So our spirits are kind of coming, they're not just abandoning our bodies, but they're still going on a little journey without our body. And so an astral journey is really like being in a dream state, but being aware and remembering when you get out. And I'd never done anything like that. And so she's like, okay, we're going to, we drop into meditation. And then she's like, we're going to pop up into the roofs of our houses. And I was like, oh, cool. And then we're going to go to this like area where there's like a stream flowing through, and it was all described. And so you're in it, you're looking at it, you're there. And we're going to go in the stream and wash away whatever it was that we were leaving behind and come out and get a gift from a guide. And we came back and I was like, what? I mean, my mind was really blown, and it was the difference between like, because it was like the realest dream I've ever had. But when you wake up, you're kind of like, oh, I remember that, and I'm going to talk about it, but then it kind of goes away. But this was like, no, I really fully was there, and it changed my my perception of kind of reality and what else is out there, because I not only believed it with my mind, but I believed it with my whole self. And it was kind of,
you kind of felt it.
I did. I felt it. And I came out of it and I was like telling my husband, and I was like, oh my gosh, and not being a very, not having a strong sense of spirituality for myself, it kind of gave me something else something to believe in. And that's more than, our physical and kind of ideas of what spirituality is. And so it was just like my whole being just believed. And it was a real turning point for my kind of awareness of what's out there or around us. And
That's very interesting, right? And it's very good because I can see, as you mentioned, that if you have like, sort of the guided meditation part where somebody's telling you, hey, this is where you're going and let's look at this. I've experienced something similar, but not to that end, in a more scientific way, but it does make you feel it. I see what you mean. It feels like a dream, but you feel something that you really feel it, like you're actually there. I've been dying to get some, people that I know into that. So I'll probably start with a guided meditation and see how that works. See how that works for there.
Yeah. It's helpful.
So Stefanie, so when you said that after you kind of went into the astral plane and it kind of changed your perception or how you felt, like you knew it was real, did that affect any of the self-doubt or any of that anxiety that you were experiencing actually, let me get the timeline right. Was that all happening kind of at the same time? Okay.
Yeah, I started, working with meditation. Yeah, with my kids being young, and the same thing. I'm just like trying different things, and I had found this teacher that was in my community that was offering energetic work and meditation. So I was just doing work with her. And so, it was around the same time. And I think the piece that really kind of, I don't know, I think the thing I want to say here that was really important to that is having, again, I said this, but I'll say it again, a sense of spiritual, not awakening, but a spiritual reality that I never understood.
Okay.
Right. Like my husband is devout Catholic. Right. And I'm like, I never grew up in anything like that. And I was like, oh, I get, when you believe in the things you cannot see, that's what it is. You believe in the things you cannot see and you don't have any proof of it really. You just believe.
So
it's like a spiritual awareness in a way.
Spiritual
like you're aware, like you're there.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So then do you think that because you mentioned that you had spoken to somebody and they said you're in like a spiritual crisis type of moment in your life at that moment, do you think it was more of, all these things changing, or you were kind of coming into kind of your spiritual awakening point of your life? Like,
Hmm.
like, I mean, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but it was 100% a spiritual awakening. And I even, even with that therapist, she's like, I think she used the word metaphysical crisis, but even after I had that meeting with her, I didn't see her anymore. Actually, I actually worked with this energy uh, a teacher after that. I was like, this is the direction I'm
Mhm.
going. I'm like, this is where I'm finding more interest and expansion and relief. So yeah, it was the beginning of a spiritual awakening for me, which I realized kind of later on. I didn't know. I didn't know
Mhm.
what was happening for me at that moment.
So I'm somebody that loves to like learn from other people's experiences because I feel like that's like the smart thing to do. So like how can somebody tell between the difference of like average day stresses, or you're just like having a bad day, or I mean, we're about to hit Mercury retrograde. So, like, Mercury retrograde, kicked you in the butt, right? Versus having, like, on the precipice of being on a spiritual awakening, right? Or like or having an energy overload or something.
Yeah. Well, okay. So most of us know what it feels like when you go out and you socialize a lot, and then you come home and you're like, I'm just overwhelmed, right? Like you have your
Mhm.
like most sensitive people, and you both are, have that feeling when they come home. It's like,
Yep.
it's like deer in headlights. Like I need a break. And so when you're feeling like that all the time or a majority of the time, um, it's usually because you're picking up a lot of energy and you're not, having energetic hygiene. So for me, it was like that. I felt, I didn't have words for it, but I would just internalize and bring home all this, information from everybody else. And I was just like, and my own, right? So it's like, it's
Mhm.
confusing and it's very overwhelming because it's yours. You don't know what's yours and what's not yours
Right.
sometimes when you're picking up all that. So I think that is like a, energetic, overwhelm that you're talking about. And then we just have, regular stress is like, you have to do this project and then you're done and then you can release it and you relax. I mean, that's regular stresses. And also in our society, we all need tools for just regular stress, right? We're all
Right.
doing like breathing and working out and all the things. And then we also have, the stress of overwhelm from, picking up other people's energy and getting overloaded like that. So tools for energetic hygiene are super important.
Do you have some tips to share with our viewers on, how to manage
Yeah.
that?
Yes, number one tip for anybody wanting to try to start to get in touch with their energetic self or internal awareness is to ground. So grounding is a practice where you're closing your eyes, you're taking deep breaths, you're connecting your spirit. We're spirits that live in these bodies. You're connecting that down, and then you're connecting your whole self to the earth. And we're always connected to the earth, right? This is our divine right to have this connection. And so we're just intentionally asking the earth kind of to hold us, it allows to release some energy. And this practice it's so easy. You can do it 5 minutes, you can spend 15 to 20 minutes doing it. It's up to
Mhm.
you, but you do it in the morning. I like to recommend doing it in the morning before you kind of go about your day. You're just like, I'm going to put on a grounding cord. It could look like a tree. It could look like a tube or a tail. Sometimes kids like to
Okay.
do it. My teacher that I had used to, had two small kids at one point, and she's like, I used to just ground on the toilet, like just whenever you can get it in, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just like we are going from one thing to the next, but it starts to bring some awareness to your energetic body.
Cool. That's a great tip.
Mhm.
That's a great tip. And now, so since you mentioned your teacher that had kids and you have kids,
Mhm.
and myself being a parent, how does your awakening change your parenting, right, or affect your parenting? Did your kids kind of notice any changes in you? Like as a parent, did you notice anything, any drastic changes based on that?
Yeah. Yeah. First of all, having a spiritual awakening when you have young children it's not the easiest, it's not the easiest thing. But I will say, I mean, doing this work has changed all of my relationships, and
Okay.
it stems from, yourself first and then kind of reverberates out. But I think with my kids, yeah, I mean, they've noticed changes. They're following along on this
Mm,
journey with me, right? So as I shift and expand, so are they. And I think it's sometimes been tough for them. Sometimes, when you're doing so much growth, they are affected, and they're like,
yeah.
what are you doing over there energetically? Like, okay. But for kids, they're already changing and growing so much all the time
Right.
anyways. So it's helpful for them. And, I think, I don't, we talk about energy, but we don't talk about it all the time. I sometimes give
Yeah.
them tools, but I'm not like going, okay, guys, let's do all this practices every day. But I like to, keep tabs, because this work as a parent is so profound, because you're, you're kind of agreeing to break the patterns, right? You're
Right.
agreeing to evolve and do things differently, follow a
Mm-hmm.
different way. And so you're breaking them for your kids too. And you're
Right.
allowing for them to be more than, what we imagine them to be, or what we think they should be, or, the
Yeah.
patterns or structure that they adopt. They'll adopt it, right? They'll adopt
Mm-hmm.
it whether you tell them to or not, because that's what they see. So I kind of like to keep the tabs on us spiritually, like the three. I have two girls, so the three of us, like where we're
Yeah.
going.
But I just want to
I'll
say,
I'll definitely ask you for advice because I'm in.
It's not perfect, okay? I'll tell you that. There's not rainbows and unicorns all the time over here. That's for
I
sure.
definitely want to say that as we're having this conversation, right? Like all three of us, I think at some point in our lives have gone through kind of a spiritual awakening, or a sense of getting closer to something that is bigger than ourselves, right? And
Hmm.
it's funny because it's not it's not pretty, right? You got to dig in, and you got to dig in deep, and sometimes that requires a lot of, you know um self-awareness, but looking at yourself and all the good and all the bad, right? And it's weird because in movies, spiritual awakening in your mind, right, like they present it like, oh, and the light comes
Like,
out and it's all like peace and balance and love, right? But in reality,
yeah.
when you're actually going through something like that, I mean, your therapist called it a crisis, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted
It's
to
a
kind
really
of
good
bring
point.
that up as like a point of like a reality point, right? Where it isn't just like so easy for the viewers out there that are kind of watching us right now. It's this idea of like spiritual awakening is supposed to be all fine and dandy, but it really isn't. It's taking a look at yourself, and also understanding kind of things that are happening with you, with this world that's outside of yourself, right? And so um I just think it's funny that we kind of talk about it, but but the movies show like, doves flying out of your back and everything's all beautiful.
Yeah,
No.
it's definitely, well, and on that point, as humans, we like to stay in our little comfort zone. And so it isn't really a choice, right? Like when you are in something like that, or have the opportunity to grow and you choose to do it, it's not like I'm going to choose to have a spiritual awakening. Like you don't wake up one day and go, oh, I'm going to choose. Like I didn't choose to be an energetic intuitive. Like I didn't write that in my journal when I was in fourth grade, right?
Right.
Like I wasn't like thinking about this my
Right,
whole
right,
life. It
right,
was just like, things come and you meet the challenge because it's worth it. You somewhere inside of you goes, oh, I know this is so hard, but I'm going to do it anyways, because what's the alternative, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hard.
Good. Well, let's shift a little bit more towards the kind of work you do. And you mentioned that you specialize in clairvoyance and claircognizance. Could you describe those terms for people that may not be familiar and can explain that? What do they mean? What it actually means from a work perspective?
Right. So we have our, normal five senses, right? Seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling. And just like those, we have these extra senses. People call them the clairs: clairaudience, clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairsentience. And so just like the five normal senses, some people have stronger, eyesight, or, hearing, or less strong hearing, just like that. So the clairvoyance for me is really clear. It's called clear seeing. So you're seeing energy as represented as colors or themes. Excuse me. Sorry. So you're seeing the energy represented as colors or themes or people or symbols or situations. And claircognizance is clear knowing, and it would be getting information about a people or situations when you're focusing on them, sometimes when you're not. And the information, for me, will come straight through in a reading, or sometimes when I'm interacting with the world, or, most of us have the ability, all of us have the ability for all of these extra senses. It's just some of us choose to work with them to make them stronger, or they know that they're a little bit strong, and so you work more with them. I hope that explains.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And to your point, a lot of people call it sometimes gut feelings, like, my gut feeling tells me this, or I get a sense for someone.
Or intuition.
Or intuition, right? But I agree. Most people have it. It's just they don't know. Some people have it more than others.
Yeah, and I think the challenge with something like intuition is we don't have any proof or validation, right? So it's like you're talking with someone, you're like getting a sense of whatever. I mean, maybe you even know somebody died, and maybe you sense something specific or in general, but there's no proof. And so you just kind of go about your day and go, or when someone calls you on the phone after you've been thinking about them, it's like, oh, it's just so we have these senses, whether we choose to.
Or I think people
focus on them.
I think for me, if something like that were to happen, in my mind, I'm just kind of thinking, oh, it's just coincidence, right? You can easily kind of your logical brain is going to kick in and say, oh, it's either I read these patterns and the patterns told me because of, things that happened before, and so I predicted this based on that pattern, right? Based on data. Or I thought that was going to happen just because I know that person really well, not because aliens are whispering in my ear telling me what to do, or what to see.
Yeah.
Right. So, Stephanie, when you realized you had those abilities when they started coming out, did they scare you, or how did that feel for you? I mean, it was kind of like, oh my God, I'm realizing this.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that the abilities scared me, because it was like I said, it was a practice. And when I started to understand, I know things, or I'm seeing things when, I'm in these meditations with energy work. The hardest part during learning and growing through that was for me, was just believing and having certainty, right? Because you really have to have certainty in something you can't prove. And
you're right.
When I was started doing readings, as I was doing intuitive development training in groups, that's when it was like, it was just like, say what you see, say what you see, say what you see. And so you're working with other people that are doing the same thing. So then they validate it for you, right? So, yeah, da 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 happened, or yes, I'm going through this exactly. You're describing it exactly. And so then when you start receiving validation like that, then you I came more into my certainty, like, oh yeah, I really can see this information or know this information. But what did really scare me, actually, as I'm working through understanding clairvoyance and energy work, was, what people outside of me or in my life would actually think about what I was doing.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, it's
And so
interesting. Yeah.
that has been honestly the scariest part and the hugest thing I've had to overcome doing this work inside of me, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I said, I didn't choose
Right.
I didn't consciously go, I'm going to be an energetic intuitive. Right. I just realized, oh yeah, I actually am going to do this. But that's been the scariest kind of part of the journey.
So what do you think, that's actually very interesting. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of the lack of knowledge on other people that, or the predisposition that people have about these things that they think about the concept of spirituality? Or is it, you think it was just you being, conscious and say, I don't know if, I'm not so sure about what I have yet, so I don't want to expose it yet? Or was it that side, or was it the side of what are they going to think? Right.
Yeah.
Once I tell them that.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of a mix of things. A part of it was, what are people going to think? I mean, that was, I think, a huge part of it. And then, I mean, because at a certain point I was like, oh, I feel confident. I felt confident in what I was doing. Right. It was, what are people going to think? It was kind of like breaking patterns within myself that, I had, part of it was, actually intuiting the information, right, from others, like my family or, people in my community. But what I want to say also is, it's complicated because, as I've looked at it over time and kind of processed most of it, is, some of it's like ancestral from, my gifts. And so that was a big piece I went through for a while, where I needed somebody, I had, somebody help me with that. And so it's, it's a mixed bag, but here we are in 2025. Look, you're doing this website, and it's time. It's time for us to just be like, who cares, right?
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying, hopefully, for anybody that's listening to this podcast, we're trying to make sure that everybody gets the knowledge and everybody understands that, look, this is normal, it's natural. Everybody has this ability, or has the ability to get there. Now, yesterday I was preparing for this, and I read it in a quote from Denzel Washington, saying, once you're going through that process of breaking barriers, generational barriers and process, everyone comes after you. Everyone comes after you. Everyone comes after you. So you just gotta work through it. That's the only way through it.
It's true. And it's not what you think, right? It's really sneakily. All of a sudden you're like, oh, with this person, like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen, or wow, and it's not like, oh, this one thing happened. It's just like feelings come up, and it gets interesting. Yeah. Build strength for sure.
I feel like, isn't it open knowledge that we all know that we're all a little bit nuts and crazy and weird, and there's things that like happen in the world or in life that we can't explain. So I feel like can't we just open up a little bit?
It's one thing. It's one thing when you see it on TV. It's another thing when the person next to you in your community is going, I can read energy. Like, then people are like, what?
Yeah,
what I mean? Yeah. Like it's interesting.
Right.
Like we like to talk about thing, and I do believe everybody believes that, but we want to be safe. Yeah. We want to be safe.
Do you feel like, was it a mixed bag of reaction, or was it everyone just kind of like, one eyebrow up, like, are you, like, you read energy? Like,
I never got that negative reaction. Everyone's been so positive. Like, And I mean, it's mostly internal kind of structures I'm breaking down. That being said, you know, there is one eyebrow up sometimes energetically.
I will say, you know, one of the great things of having Naveem, right, and having the platform and getting to meet a bunch of different practitioners is that you find that, you know, there's practitioners that are like, you know, they do I Ching and tarot and then but they're lawyers, right? Or they're like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they they do astrology but they're a nurse, right? Like so it's not like the I guess the you know the notion that oh
There's not that specific type of
yeah
person that just
that it's
does
like
it.
oh
Totally
it's this
budget.
person and their heads in the clouds and they're just very you know like not grounded or they don't have a professional life or etc. And you find that the everybody kind of believes in something that's not
Mm-hmm.
really tangible in this
Yeah.
world, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really important point for these kind of practices, or you know, what you're holding space for on Naveem is we have these stereotypes in our mind. We really do, whether we're well intentioned or not, right? It's hard to
Right.
break those
Mm-hmm.
down. Like we
Yeah.
look at Instagram, we're like looking at things, images our whole life of in movies of what things look like and are supposed to be. And it's a real good space to be for, I think, humanity now, to like be looking at things and questioning like, oh, that is not really, they don't look like what I thought, or they're not, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
everyone's got a little of this in them, or and I have tried to keep my finger very carefully on my own kind of stereotypes when I present my work, or when I'm looking at other people's work, or yeah, it's like, do I have to look like this, or you know, be showing pictures of like candles burning, you know, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like,
Yeah.
you know, you can play into that, but it's very tricky, because I believe that right now, like you were saying, like we're all growing and evolving. We're all starting to realize, oh, we all have innate wisdom, and we are still lawyers and doctors and teachers, and we still have to like chug along and live our lives. And so I hope that those barriers are really breaking down, so that we can just see each other as like spirit and pure, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So, in your practice, I know you mentioned that you help people kind of reclaim their personal power. So, what does losing one's personal like power look like energetically, and how do you help clients like regain that?
Yeah. So what I would say about that, so I help people regain that by, you know, doing energetic work, teaching people energetic tools. So helping them develop deeper self-awareness, right? That's how we're going to be able to really reclaim our personal power, is to actually believe, like I said in that meditation, that we are spirits in bodies, right? Like
Mm.
we are a spirit in this body, right? And we have to grow up in whatever environment we grow up in, and we just build all these layers of things that are not really always in line with who we are. And so that's really when we lose our personal power. And that's
Okay.
why, you know, I think in midlife, or when you become a parent, it really becomes obvious that, oh, like when we look at ourselves and go, oh, this doesn't feel quite right, and I don't know why, right? So that would be the sense of losing your personal power, or feeling like mired down every day, like overwhelmed in uncertainty, or having fear, and you just don't know, right? You don't know like what to do, or like who you are. So that's extreme, right? That's an extreme,
Mm-hmm.
like losing loss of power. And then there's just kind of the day to day when you're like, I don't know what to do about this one area of my life, right? Like whether it's a job or a relationship, and you just can't quite figure it out, or you're struggling in one area. That's also like a little bit of loss of personal power. You can't see clearly. When you
Got it.
can't see clearly is really
Mm-hmm.
when you're not fully connected to the truth of your spirit. And it happens, right? It happens to all of us all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And sometimes we can do it, rebalance ourselves, and sometimes we need help. So that is, I wanted to say one more thing about that. I think, when individuals are disconnected from the truth of their spirit, they feel it super strongly, right? You start to go question everything. And when it happens, it can be from just like years of like your whole life of like doing things that weren't in line with you.
Right.
It also comes from your ancestral lines, the messaging you've gotten, the patterning imposed, upon you in our society, and then reinforced obviously by the greater world. It's like, do these things, and just a lot of societal norms and expectations that just don't align.
So, for our listeners, in terms of energy tools or energy work, what does that look like? Is it like meditation? Is it a sense of like one-on-one conversations? Like, what does that look like?
Sure. So there's different ways to work with energy, like acupuncture and Reiki, right? We kind of familiar with those. And the way I work with energy is I look at and interpret someone's whole energetic system. So in a session, that would look like myself and the person receiving the session, just kind of closing our eyes, dropping in to a slightly meditative state together. And then I can get an overall snapshot of their energetic system. And then I can hone in on their question or area of focus and look specifically at what may be showing up that's blocking or getting in the way of them being able to find clarity and answers to the specific problem or area of focus that they brought to the reading. So a block. So I want to talk a little bit about a block. Like a block can look like a pattern energetically that they received from a parent or from society. And the energy of a parent themselves can actually be in their energetic space, for example. And then once we identify where the block or pattern is, that's when we use the energy tools. And the most important tool used in energy work is visualization, actually, and the power of an individual to be able to be aware of what is sitting in there. So when I'm talking with someone in a session and looking at their energetic field and they have that, oh yeah, moment, then they are in the process of relating with the energy and they're seeing it and knowing it for themselves on some level. So once that awareness of the pattern or block becomes clear during a session, the pattern or block will start to change and shift in that person's daily life. So it'll allow them to have some healing and growth. And then perspective shifts can happen, and new decisions that are coming from more alignment with that person and their clarity and certainty. And the last thing I really wanted to say about the session, is some of the things that, examples of people have walked away with or followed up with. Oftentimes I don't get feedback because some of the healing and growth happens after the session.
Yeah.
And so people like forget, or they're not thinking about me, they're thinking about themselves. So people will say they've their life path has become clear. What direction to take has become clear. Solutions to their problems have become more clear, and they become more certain in them. And also, other things that have happened is people they'll have the inspiration, or they'll have the clarity to take the step to talk to the loved one that they have had an issue with, or go to therapy to kind of work through some of the blocks that came up during a session.
Just a follow-up. So when you see patterns or you see the energy field, is it in color, or what does it look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sometimes patterns will look like an object, or and then as an energetic intuitive, I will be asking an internal questions. Sometimes I tell the person I'm reading, like, oh, this is weird things coming up. Not weird, but this image is coming up and I don't know why I'm seeing it. And I'll be asking it during the session to reveal more information. Sometimes it's colors, yes. And sometimes it's just a knowing, like, oh, this pattern came directly from your mom and her ancestral lines, or it'll be very clear.
Okay.
So it's in different ways.
Sounds really interesting and very cool.
It is.
I can see that, when you go through these sessions, I can put myself in maybe the person's place and how powerful it is to potentially have something identified for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your life. And after it's been identified or kind of brought to the surface, how that could change your perspective or your day-to-day interactions with people, right? Like I've had situations where, like Humphrey knows the story where, I had this realization of how when I can be stubborn and really dig in, how annoying I could be to other people. Right. And it wasn't until through work that it was kind of shown to me that I can be like that in certain instances. And then once it was actually shown to me when it was happening in actually day-to-day life, I can actually connect to it and go, oh, I'm doing that thing again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to stop.
Yeah, that's really cool awareness. And I often say, there's space created between yourself and then the thing. So when we're not creating that space and like going into practices or self-awareness practices, then we're becoming the effect of it. It's just so in our face, we can't see it clearly. So it is cool when you can walk around and notice and start to, go, oh yeah, hold yourself accountable. That's fun.
Yeah.
Good. Now, so you describe what you do overall with your clients, but is there any kind of daily energetic hygiene routine or something that you could share with our listeners so they can do, especially if they're like busy parents or people that, just busy people are like, you mentioned at the beginning, right? Like the world we live in, everything's like go, 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 go. Is there a simple sort of routine that you would recommend for people to do?
Yes. So a couple things. One is the grounding that I mentioned earlier. And that's really starting to tune in to your connection as a spirit into your body. And without overthinking it, it is really just taking some moments like at the beginning of your day to just kind of arrive here, because we wake up and we're just like, we're already 20 steps ahead, right, of our body doing whatever. And so it's, for me, when I started grounding and working just with that one tool, I literally felt like the energy in my body, like it was like, when you're numb, when you're like lose the feeling in your leg because you sat on it or whatever, it starts tingling. It was like that. It was like, oh, my awareness, your awareness starts to kind of come back to your body. And it's not the solution for all to be grounding, but it starts the kind of conversation of energetic awareness and self-awareness. And the other thing I would say is, as much as possible between activities, trying to like just take a pause. Like, so you get in the car, you're crazy, maybe we have kids, you're getting them in the car, you get in the car with them all, driving to school, and just taking like 3 deep breaths. Like it really, you have time for that. You gotta like realizing that you have the time. You won't realize it until you start to actually do the small practices, because then you're like, oh, actually I can take 3 deep breaths between each activity. It doesn't take longer than a minute, so.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to shift a little bit because I've been dying to get to this part of, our conversation, which is we talk about tarot a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Only because, I'm a beginner at learning tarot. I don't even know what all the cards actually mean. I'm still trying to figure that out. But wanted to kind of just ask you, you previously said, you have clairvoyance, and I know that you also practice tarot. You offer a tarot reading on Naveem.com. So wanted to ask you, like, are those two things together when you're like, are you using clairvoyance while you're also using the cards? And how does that interplay? And does it help you kind of see more messages otherwise that than the cards are telling you?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. And yes, I started practicing tarot and learning about tarot before I got into energy work. And, so how I use tarot now is it's like a doorway, right? I use my intuitive senses and my clairvoyance, claircognizance when I am pulling cards now. So I, you can ask the cards a question, but I can also just pull a card and for myself or for somebody else and get the information that they need from that card. It's kind of like a doorway to receive information.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then having familiarity with the cards, sure, symbols and numbers, and colors, those all help get more information from the cards, especially the numbers I'm finding. So for example, before I do an energetic intuitive reading with somebody, I just have their name. And before I get on with them, I will pull a card for them and receive information for them. I'll write it down, and the process of writing is very helpful for me. And then I get a kind of pure information about their energy before we go into their specifics. And then I'll share that with them. But it usually is kind of lines up with what they're wanting to, or what they're going through, or what they're wanting to know.
Interesting. Very good. Since I'm a parent, is there a card that you pull often for parents? An example, like, is there a card that when you're doing tarot readings, like, is there a card that comes up a lot for parents? And if so, which one?
Yeah, I will say there's one card. It doesn't come up, but for me, it represents the journey for parents. If you want me to show you here.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's the Tower card. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. This is one version. This is one deck I use. Yeah. So that to me kind of sums up the whole parenting realm, which is, just really breaking down patterning, the opportunity to break down patterns within yourself as you go through parenting, right? You're face to face with, all the stuff that you learned, all the imprinting that you had, and am I going to pass this on? Am I going to, and then having to you can read all the parenting books that you want, but still you're just stuck in the middle of it, right? And so it's really an opportunity, like I said, parenting for breaking down things that you no longer serve you, your children, or even like culturally, society, it's time to move on. Yeah. But also the most cards I do pull for parents or people overwhelmed in the life of parenting, or just, where they are the minor arcana cards. And so the major arcana are about like big life changes that we're going through, right? And the minor arcana are like day-to-day, opportunities for change, a personal evolution in like mental states, physical states, emotional states, and spiritual states. So there's 4 different kind of themes. And so it's really, those cards come up and we look at the specifics, because we are being asked to slow down and to grow. And those get really specific for somebody. So I find those cards are more, unless it's a big life transition, those come up more.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It sounds like parents need to slow down a little bit. I mean, even with like
Yes.
energy work, right? It's like
Yeah.
you got to take the time to breathe, and then the in tarot, it's like the minor arcana cards are like you got to take time.
Hey, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like saying, "Hey, look at
Yeah.
this. Just can you look at this? Can you look at this?" And we have a choice. And it's okay. It's okay if, you're like, I don't want to. I don't want to change. I don't want to be the lineage breaker. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Your kids might have to do it though.
That's true.
Just kidding. We're all doing it. I think we're all doing it right now.
Well, I
Anyways.
feel like the newer generation is a lot more open to metaphysical practices, right? Like
Mhm.
tarot right now is kind of booming online a little bit, right? You see,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, and even in yourself, Stephanie, where you have like your quick readings, right? So does that stuff like does it work? Do you find that there's value in that? And how does that work when you're you're doing a reading, but it's for everybody? Like how does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how does that work? Well, I think these quick tarots, I think it's great. I think great people are talking about tarot. I think, like I was saying, tarot is such a great doorway into developing your own tuition. Um, and so I think that, if they're positive and they're being responsible, it's great. I pull one card for myself every morning, and sometimes I can sit with it. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, I pulled the card and I gotta go, and it's just something to do.
Hmm.
Um, so the quick is it. It's the quick is, how much are you going to put into it? But I would hope, and I think this is happening, that people are kind of vetting the information through their own intuition before they're like taking it on,
Yeah.
right? So, if people aren't doing that, then it can become confusing, and but otherwise, I think doing all of that is great. And so for me, I started my Tarot Insights because I wanted to get that information about the collective, in the times that we're living. And I had never really done that before. It was like a specific person or
Hmm.
myself. And I was like, oh, let's see. So I have a meditation I do before I go into it to be able to look at the collective energy. And then I pull the cards for it. And then I could speak to it from a different place
Yeah.
where I'm looking at it. So I don't know what everybody else is doing
No,
to
I
prepare.
love what you said because I think a part of energy hygiene, right? Like if you see a tarot reading that's online, that might not be for you, and you have to be able to decipher whether that message is for you today or that's not
Mhm.
really a message for you today, right? And it is your intuition that kind of tells you that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it
Very
is.
interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting.
The
Now,
times are calling for that.
um, as you mentioned about how you go into sort of the spiritual awareness and the process, and you're breaking down sort of generational barriers and everything else. A lot of parents today are battling what we call toxic productivity. Right, they're all over. They need to do well at work. They want to be perfect at home, perfect at work, perfect at how would you describe, or how would you help them understand that the energy work helps them break that cycle, like break the cycle of you don't need to be perfect on
Mm.
every area of your life. You need to, once you're going through the process of growth, how would you describe that? What kind of work should they start? We know meditation and grounding, but in this case, for people that are super busy and have that issue with the kids, what can they do?
So, what can they do, or
From an
like what
energy
do they
work
do to
how do the
break out
energy
of?
work
Okay,
helps them out on that?
yeah, how energy work, really helps. The biggest gift of energy work is creating more self awareness. So when we
Okay.
start to kind of see who we are underneath all the layers, the roles, the programming, like the must haves and the must have to do all those things, um, we start to live life more aligned with who we truly are. And we do that by making choices that stem from a different place. They're not coming from the outside in, they're coming from the inside out. And so we're like a mess, right? We're always off balance. We make mistakes. We're humans and we're imperfect. And when we can see ourselves as imperfect and still move on with compassion, we start to grow compassion for ourselves. It just like creates the ability to have compassion for others, right? And that's where it begins. So that's the energy work, creating more self-awareness and compassion is how the cycle of productivity really does break. And it's happening collectively, right? It is. I mean, people are wanting it. And so, yeah.
Well, that's what we want to achieve, right? I mean, it's happening, and we definitely hope that with Naveen, we're helping people get those tools and get that awareness.
It's funny because like Naveem is, our platform. We're in the digital age now, right? Where we're using technology a lot more. Like recently I saw this I think it was on Instagram. I saw this clip where the guy that was talking, he was like, put right in your ChatGPT, like what they have them give you an analysis of you. And what ChatGPT will do is all the questions that you've asked them, they'll turn around and tell you like, this is how you are, who you are, what you're interested in, et cetera, and it'll give you some insights, right? And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I haven't done it yet because, I'm a firm believer in don't ask questions until you're ready to hear the answers, right? But we have, AI therapists, I guess now. We got, meditation apps that have been around for a bit now. Stefanie, why do you think like human to human energy healing still matters?
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I think that AI, I mean, I'm all for any kind of therapy or meditation that's accessible, right, for people because we all need help and we all ask in different ways. So I'm totally 100% for all that stuff. But I'm not 100% sure about AI and its ability to really see the truth of somebody as a spirit. And so like I was saying earlier, when someone can see the truth of you, whether it's an energy worker, a therapist, a teacher, a friend, really it opens up something else and you feel seen, right? And you also feel less alone. And I think that's one of the key things to human connection, right? With AI, it's great. There's a bunch of cool things it can do, but human to human connection still has its place.
Still can't beat it. Still can't beat that. All right. Well, as to finalize this tarot side, thinking about the new generation, Gen Alpha, right? Those kids. So if you could pull a tarot card for them and give them a message, what would that be?
Okay. I have the card. You want me to show it?
Yeah.
You're going to be excited. This is the card. It's positive. It's the sun. Wait, let me see if I can.
There you go.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Okay, the sun. 19, a major arcana card. Okay, so this card is about going forward with abundance, right? It's abundance from within and enthusiasm, joy, bounty, springtime, and real newness. So, it's not just like, oh, everything's okay. It's really coming out of something with new ideas, new ways. Yeah. It is, I'm super hopeful for the future. Things are shifting collectively, absolutely. And it's uncomfortable, but they are shifting for the benefit of us all. And, this generation is going to have to kind of usher it in and hold hands with the newness. And they can do it. They're born for this. They are born for it. My children are of this generation. I can see it. It's really exciting. I have all positive feelings about this generation going forward. Yeah.
Awesome.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the time we have left for today. So thank you so much, Stefanie, for sharing such raw wisdom with us. If there's one thing I think I'm taking away from this conversation, it's that healing isn't about fixing ourselves. It's about reclaiming the power we already had.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks, Stefanie. And to our listeners, if you're ready to explore Stefanie's readings, her tarot cards, or her 3-breath reset, head down to naveen.com. All the links are in the description below.
And if this episode resonated with you, leave us a review or share it with somebody who needs a little light today. Remember, trust your energy, honor your pace, and keep asking the big questions. Next month, join us as we explore Yoruba spiritual traditions with a practicing Babalao and a Harvard-educated professor of African religions. Discover how these ancestral teachings might offer profound guidance for navigating our rapidly changing world.
Until next time, this is Gene and Humphrey signing off. Stay connected, stay kind.